President Muhammadu Buhari assures Nigerians of far-reaching measures to ensure food security.
Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, describes APC victory as catalyst for robust development in Kwara State.
Trial of suspended Chief Justice Walter Onoren to proceed daily at Code of Conduct Tribunal.
And this Tuesday on Good Morning Nigeria, our post-mortem of Saturday's governorship and state houses of assembly elections continues with situation room account of how it went down.
All right, now we are all aware by now that some new members will be joining the Governors Forum in the coming months, even as many old ones have retained their seats. Now, this is as INEC continues the announcement of results of Saturday's governorship and state houses of assembly elections that took place throughout the country.
Absolutely, Kingsley. States like Kwara, Lagos, and Nasarawa, Gombe have new governors, while Akwa Ibom, Kebbi, Jigawa, Kaduna, Delta, and others retained their incumbents. Even as the results are still coming in, analysts and civil society groups are lamenting the violence that became very rampant in some states, resulting in the suspension of elections in those areas.
That's right, Kiriam. Now, the elections, of course, held in relative calm in the majority of the states, but violence, ballot box snatching characterized the process in states such as Rivers, Bayelsa, and Imo. And you know very well, Kiriam, we have always raised the issue of electoral violence on Good Morning Nigeria on a number of occasions. We're just wondering when Nigerian politicians will stop seeing electioneering as war.
And the most embarrassing part of this do-or-die attitude of Nigerian politicians is the fact that the world is watching us. Many domestic civil society organizations deployed hundreds of election monitors alongside those from international observer missions. And they witnessed this ungentlemanly behavior that still rears its ugly head in the Nigerian political terrain today.
Now, one observer group, the Center for Democracy and Development, has condemned the threats, harassment, and assault of election officials, observers, voters, and even journalists during the state governorship and House of Assembly elections that took place on Saturday. In fact, Kirian, we'll be having a guest from the Center for Democracy and Development later on in the course of the program, because we have a number of allegations about how, in fact, a political thug was said to have assaulted and abducted an observer in Akwa Ibom.
That is indeed absurd, Kingsley, and it is very obvious that Nigeria cannot continue like this during campaigns and elections. What kind of message does this leave for the young upcoming politicians? Let's not forget that INEC offices were also bound in Imo and Akwa Ibom states. Where is the place of policies of maturity? Can we realistically have elections without violence?
And in furtherance of those issues you've just raised, Kyria, we're going to ask the question, what is it that marred the otherwise peaceful conduct of the elections last Saturday? And how well do the voters and politicians abide by the electoral rules? Now, all those are matters that our guests, of course, will be provided answers to on today's edition of Good Morning Nigeria.
All right, going further, you know, it's my pleasure, really, you know, to welcome you to this program. This particular edition is very special in the sense that we are gradually rounding off our conversations on, post-mortem of elections. Yes, and as usual, we are also going to be bringing you our complimentary segments on the program, which will include newspaper review, business, sports, foreign, and entertainment news. And let's get started by joining Ifeoma Ojinta, who has the news for us this morning. Ifeoma, good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Kieran and Kinsley. Good morning, Nigeria. And here's the news. President Muhammadu Buhari is reassuring Nigerians that far-reaching measures are underway towards making agriculture a truly paying business that will contribute more significantly to the nation's gross domestic products. Speaking with a cross-section of Daura community on solidarity visits over his re-election for another term in office, the president described agriculture as critical to the future of the country.
His devotion to duty, sense of honesty, and straightforwardness. And that's why he is chosen to go for the second term.
The election have come and gone, and we hope that the future will be brighter and brighter and brighter.
Everybody knows what Buhari can do. He has done it before. He has done it in the first term, and then the next level, he's going to do more. He's the architect of modern Nigeria.
President Muhammadu Buhari says he is looking forward to a better and mutual working relationship with members of the 9th National Assembly towards enhancing the budgetary process, good governance and effective service delivery to Nigerians. Receiving his old school mates on a congratulatory visit over his re-election for a second term, the president recounted how the delay in the passage of budgets, for instance, hindered timely execution of projects across the country.
Delighted with the way Nigerians, re-elected him because they believe in him in leading this country to a higher height.
The president also had audience with the re-elected governor of Katsina State, Amilu Bello Masari. And from Kwara State comes the next report that Information and Culture Minister Lai Mohammed says the victory of the APC in Kwara State marks the flag off of robust development agenda for the state. The minister made the remark at a media briefing in Ilorin, the Kwara State capital.
Rework has just begun. The expectations of our people are very high. We must ride on the wave of the enthusiasm and determination to deliver to them the dividends of democracy for which they have been yearning. All our leaders, both elect and otherwise, must come together to channel their energy and vibrancy of our people to positive goals.
The trial of the suspended Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Walter Onoge, for alleged false declaration of assets will now be on daily basis at the Code of Conduct Tribunal. Chairman of the tribunal, Danladi Umar, gave the order at the resumed trial of the defendants.
The issue of judicial is raised. It must be determined before any other thing is done. And much more so, the motion that challenges his impartiality to continue with this matter, that's the one for him to recuse himself, is a threshold motion that he ought to deal with first.
The first time that a court said I will reserve my ruling on challenging my jurisdiction until I'm delivering the judgment.
Meanwhile, judicial officers have been advised to ensure the protection of constitutionally enshrined human rights of the citizen in their interpretation of the law. Acting Chief Justice of the Federation, Justice Ibrahim Tanko Mohammed, gave the advice at the opening of 2019 refresher course for judges and cadis in Abuja.
We must be constantly reminded that democracy in itself is nothing if fundamental principles enshrined in the Constitution of this nation cannot be readily determined on constitutional application by a judiciary manned by upright judicial officers.
The National Assembly is set to resume plenary after 4 weeks break for the general elections. In an interview with NTA News, spokesperson for the Senate and House of Representatives said the 2019 appropriation bill and the passage of the National Minimum Wage Bill are the key issues before the legislature.
And I expect that, of course, all of these issues, including the budget, will receive expeditious attention from us.
The issue of the national budget and that of minimum wage for civil servants. We will do our best to ensure that this budget is passed at the right time and is also assented to at the right time.
In line with tradition, however, sitting is expected to be adjourned to Wednesday, the 13th of March 2019, in honor of Representative Olatoye Temitope, who died last Saturday. Taraba State government has imposed a dusk-to-dawn curfew on Jalingo, the state capital, from Monday, the 11th of March, until further notice. The curfew will run from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. daily. However, INEC officials, key agents of political parties and observers involved in collation of election results are exempted. A statement by the Chief Press Secretary to the Governor, Hassan Mijinyawa, states that Governor Darius Dixon Ishaku enjoined the people of the state to be law-abiding. Credible intelligence available to the Nigerian army has confirmed the kitting of political thugs with military uniforms and arming of same to impersonate soldiers and perpetrate various crimes in the furtherance of the activities of their political bosses. A statement by the Acting Director, Army Public Relations, Sagir Musa, says, sadly, these thugs have severally been wrongly viewed and addressed as real military personnel on various social and mainstream media channels, thereby bringing the reputation of the Nigerian army on several occasions to disrepute. In the interim, the Nigerian army will continue to advise well-meaning citizens to avoid being used as tools in the hands of politicians, as the Nigerian army will continue to use every opportunity available to remind Nigerians of its apolitical, neutral and non-partisan stance. The statement says the Nigerian army would gladly welcome any information from the public about known or suspected imposters or armed thugs being used to perpetrate violence in the society. And that's the news for now. Kinsley and Kirian will be back after this break.
Helen!
Hey, where's your mom?
Today is her toilet day.
What?
Helen!
Toilet day?
Tomorrow you're hosting a party and it's a matter of my reputation.
Even if you spend your entire day cleaning with all this, it still won't be party ready.
Impossible!
Challenge? New Ticker Harpic 10X. Even if you use this solution 10 times, it won't give you the same cleaning like Harpic, because its new Ticker formulation sticks to the bowl better, giving you a sparkling clean toilet.
Wow!
New Harpic 10X
gives me the freedom from toilet day.
What's up?
His friends didn't come.
Hey, let's practice.
But you're going out.
Don't worry about me.
Nothing satisfies a mother more than seeing a child grow up. But I know as he sweats, he'll face the risk of germs which can cause skin irritation.
That's why you need the new best ever Electoral Cool. Its new advanced formulation with extra menthol protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs and gives your family icy cool freshness.
Growing up needs Dettol protection.
Sore throats? It's often caused by bacteria and viruses. Feels like they're having a party. You need Strepsils. It soothes the pain, plus it fights the germs with 2 germ-killing actives. Double power in 1 lozenge. Bye-bye sore throat. Take Strepsils.
Here you go.
Madam.
That's it. Those naira are enough.
Hi, dear. Helen! You got so much even after spending so little.
Savings is such a necessity.
You save everywhere, but here, you lose it all.
How?
With this?
Impossible.
New Ticker Harpic 10X. Even after applying up to 1 liter of your solution multiple times, you won't get the same cleaning that Harpic gives you in a single round.
And the expense?
Far less compared to your 1 liter of solution. New Ticker Harpic. Tough in cleaning,
tough in savings.
And you're watching Good Morning Nigeria. Now let's go to business. Stakeholders advocate establishment of Export Trading Company to deepen non-oil export in Nigeria. For details, let's join Chimaobi Water and Energy on Business News.
With all the successes recorded in the Nigerian manufacturing sector, issues bordering on quality control and enhancing exports of Nigerian products has dominated the industry. Some experts are therefore advocating the establishment of an export trading company that will make use of the Anchor Borrowers program of the federal government for deepening export potentials in the non-oil segment of the economy. The export trading company, when established, will be expected to act as a catalyst for the promotion and enhancement of commodities export in Nigeria. The Executive Director and Chief Executive Officer, Nigerian Export Promotion Council, NEPC, says the company, which will be private sector driven, will help to mitigate the risk encountered by small-scale manufacturers by providing a ready market for their wares.
The commodity exchange is just a trading platform. Now, so you trade your goods. But what we are talking about, an export trading company that is able to invest, buy up your cashew oils for you, buy it up so the farmers don't suffer. They go. It's able to store, it's able to process, and then sell off. It's almost like an aggregator, really. So you need a huge company like that is backed by money, with business sense. So we're looking at big government intervention, public sector funding, but private sector driven.
Other stories, negative sentiments continue to dominate trading on the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange, with the market shedding 0.90% on the first trading day of the week. Here is a graphic representation of trading figures on the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange. With Business News, I'm Chimaobi Water and Energy. Thank you very much, Chimaobi Water and Energy, for the business package. The newspaper review segment is next on Good Morning Nigeria.
And let's welcome Bayo Altoyebi, our newspaper reviewer for today. You're welcome.
Thank you, Kiran. Good morning. Good morning, Kinsley.
Right,
good morning, Nigeria.
Yeah, good to see you. Well, of course, the obvious lead stories on the front pages of the 3 and 4 papers that we have this morning are all focusing on the outcome of the governorship elections. New Telegraph has it with a kicker: governorship polls, deadlock in Kano, Adamawa, Benue, Bauchi, Sokoto, and Plateau. Deadlock in Kano, Adamawa, Benue, Bauchi, Sokoto, and Plateau. Now, there is a sidebar there that provides a list and scores of the governorship election winners in the 29 states where elections took place. You can see that there. Now, there are a number of riders, of course, to the lead story. That's the lead headline. Tambuwa, that's the governor of Sokoto, to INEC, declare me winner. Autumn, I'm not perturbed. Ihedioha wins Imo. El Rufai, Okowa, Masari, Ayade, Zulum, and Sule win. INEC and PDP bicker over inconclusive polls. And you have a photograph of the front page there, showing a returning officer and an electoral officer who were alleged to have been involved in some finagling of the results in Owerri. Now, the headline below that, which is the second lead story, says, REC orders arrest of INEC officers for doctoring results, with 2 riders, commissioner and local government chair nabbed, that is arrested, and police rescue Kano deputy governor. Details can be found on page 6. And Kyria, let me take another headline involving the elections, this time below the nameplate of New Telegraph. Below the nameplate of New Telegraph says, INEC excludes Okorocha from Senators elect list. INEC excludes Okorocha from Senators elect list. And I'm excited over outcome of elections. That's according to President Buhari. Details on page 5. Kyria.
All right. The two other newspapers we have here also have election-related matters as the lead stories. Let's begin with the Nigerian Tribune. Nigerian Tribune, the lead story on the Nigerian Tribune says, INEC declares Bauchi, Sokoto, Plateau, Benue, Adamawa, Kano polls inconclusive. That's the governorship polls, inconclusive. And of course, it has a writer here, INEC boss, acting APC script, says PDP. All right. And also on Daily Sun newspaper, this one, the lead story is also on the outcome of the election. Say no winners in Kano, Benue, Sokoto, says INEC. But just besides the nameplate of Daily Sun, El Rufai, Masari, Idris, Okowa win in Kaduna, Katsina, Samfara, and Delta. Now, with a rider, dusk to dawn coffee imposed on Taraba. You can get that story on page 6 and 43. Let's bring in Bayo here.
Yes, let's catch up with the updates with the election result. More situations have come clarified. Among those that the result that were released, All Progressive Congress has now won in Zamfara, Katsina, as well as in Kaduna State. For the People's Democratic Party, from the election result announced so far, they've now taken Delta and Imo State. Election results in 5 states are inconclusive. The states are Adamawa, Bauchi, Benue, Plateau, and Sokoto. The results in 2 states have been suspended. Those are Kano and Rivers. For now, the tally appears that All Progressive Congress has now won 13 states, People's Democratic Party 8 states, inconclusive election in 5 states, and suspended elections in 2 states. There's curfew imposed on Jalingo. This is a curfew 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. This is as a result of a threat to public peace. However, the governor has provided exemption for INEC officials, party agents, and INEC collation officers who are involved in collation. This is to ensure that collation continues in a peaceful atmosphere. Elections that are declared inconclusive are those that where election results are cancelled, the votes are higher than the margin between the 2 lead candidates. Meanwhile, Governor Nasir El-Rufai has thanked the people of Kaduna for his re-election. He called on the people to end the manipulation of religion for personal gains. His running mate is from southern Kaduna. However, she is a Muslim. Like 1993, Muslim ticket before the election was mischievously annulled. Is the issue of religion in politics a fallacy? Last year in Ekiti State, the same issue was raised with religion. You now have a governor and deputy governor who are both Christians, and heavens have not fallen. Governor Nasir El-Rufai says religion must not be an issue, will not be an issue in his administration. In fact, in the excitement, the people of Kaduna State are saying, come May 29, they will have the first female deputy governor in the north. They forgot that Pauline Talen was deputy governor in Plateau State. In fact, in Kaduna State, Pamela Sadauki was deputy to a military administrator in Kaduna.
All right. There are other stories apart from politics that we have. And let's return to the Nigerian Tribune. Nigerian Tribune. And on the left-hand side of the newspaper, we have no Boeing 737 MAX 8 operating in Nigeria, said the NCCA. A black box of a crashed Ethiopian Airlines plane found. I hope Bayo is going to give us an analysis of that incident. It's on pages 32 and 34. The CCT orders day-to-day trial of Justice Onogen on page 4. Ajimobi, Adelabo, or your APC congratulates Makinde. It's on page 29.
Well, Kieran, the story on Ethiopian airline airliner that crashed is also on the front page of New Telegraph, above the name flag of the paper. It says, airlines ground planes over Ethiopia crash as Boeing shares fall. 3 riders there. Black boxes, as you read earlier, recovered. Now, late pilot had 8,000 flying hours. And we've not taken delivery of our order. That's according to Air Peace. Air Peace is said to have placed order for some of the Boeing 737-8 MAX for their use. And there are 2 other stories there below the nameplate of New Telegraph. Nigerian passenger dies on Delta Airlines Atlanta-Lagos flight. That's on page 6. And teenager jailed 6 years for stealing 3 female pants. That's on page 7. Bayo.
Well, let's return to the issue of the Boeing 737 MAX 8 aircraft. China has grounded 100 Boeing 734 MAX airline in its air fleet. Ethiopia Airlines has also grounded 3 others that it has. Cayman Airlines has also grounded the 2 that it has. All around the world, the Boeing had, between 2017 and now, has sold as many as 350 of the aircraft. And customers has placed an order for 4,661. And so there is actually confusion in the aviation industry, particularly with the aircraft. It may be recalled that Malaysia Airline last October, after 13 minutes of flight, also plunged and killed all the 189 passengers. There are concerns that there could be some defect, which is occasioning the flights having challenges immediately after takeoff. Meanwhile, the deputy governor of Kano State has been cleared by the commissioner of police that he was not involved in the hulabaloo about disruption of collation of result at Nasarawa. 2 other persons, Murtala Sule, a commissioner, and Lamin Sani, chairman Nasarawa local government, have been arrested and have questions to answer about disrupting the collation at Nasarawa local government. The result from Nasarawa local government was the only one outstanding for the 44 local government. 43 local government had been announced, and then they came and disrupted that. That is why you now have Kano state election results has been suspended. When all those things are clear, then perhaps the election will be aroused. Another state that has been suspended is that of Rivers. Already, INEC officials are already in Rivers and are interviewing all the persons concerned with that election results.
I think because the Nigerians are not particularly, happy about the situation in Rivers State, particularly because it does appear that nothing works there politically. Everything has been turned into some kind of violence and impersonations, people appearing to be military men when they are not, and all of that. So one wonders why such cantankerous situation in Rivers State.
Well, it's a question we keep posing to our guests and insiders in Rivers. Yesterday on Good Morning Nigeria, it's also an issue that came up, and today, hopefully, once we get across to our correspondent, we'll also have further insight into what is playing out. That's the recent history of Rivers, by the way. Rivers used to be a placid, very quiet environment, but it's been militarized.
Garden city of Nigeria.
Unfortunately,
all of a sudden
yes.
has become a belligerent state. When it comes to politics, the people there are so bellicose. I don't know why.
Exactly.
Last year, in the 2015 election, as many as 20 people were killed in the elections. This time, the Nigerian army has now come to say that there is credible intelligence that political thugs are being kitted in military uniforms.
Really?
The thugs are also armed to impersonate soldiers.
But fine. That's what they have said. But why aren't those persons being arrested and prosecuted? If you recall, Kira, whether you and I were on set, while we're walking towards the general elections, one of the points again that we raised with our security guests had to do with the fact that, look, during elections, you have these rampant cases of impersonation.
Yes.
People, we call them rogue elements, who will put on uniforms for police officers or for the military to foment trouble.
And I think what you said that is very important is the fact that those thugs were being funded by someone, by a politician, because...
someone about it. Hooligans, thugs, ballot box snatching, who are the patrons? These politicians. And usually when a few people are arrested, soon after the elections, they go behind the scene that these are our boys and they always let them go. So when a crime is committed and there are no punishment for it, the tendency is that such criminal act will continue. So now that The administration, particularly the command, the Nigerian police command now, is very emphatic that anybody who indulges in anything about the electoral practice, it is going to work with INEC to ensure that they are prosecuted. They should be prosecuted to serve as a deterrent.
And Nigerians worry about militarizing elections, but the attitude of politicians and their thugs, keeps demanding that you need them, on election days. Otherwise, thousands of people will lose their lives on election day in Nigeria if you don't have military around, from all indications, because people have already, developed the idea of, election, of course. Yes. There's a do or die affair, and that has continued. What we're wondering what will happen in 2023, because I think we seem to be moving every inch forward, looking for ways to destabilize election process, right?
Right.
To ensure that somebody wins a position.
Yeah, Kirian, just before we take the editorial, unless you have other stories, the Ethiopian Airlines Boeing 737 MAX 8 that crashed. A few things to also just underscore, because I'm sure yesterday you must have seen some posts on social media. They said, oh, this was a scene from inside the aircraft, before it crashed. Another one showed footage of an aircraft that crashed. All of it, obviously misleading, because the aircraft that showed that they said was taken from a UN vehicle, it had 4 engines. Now, 737 has 2 engines, so it could have been a simulation or otherwise. And so there's no point in striking fear or panic into the flying public. Air travel remains the safest so far of all means of transport, modern means of transportation.
That's what you saw really went viral, and that is part of the excesses of the social media.
That's right.
How could someone take such shots in a flight that took off just 6 minutes, after that it crashed and transmit it to?
Yes.
Who did that?
All phones are supposed to be switched off before the
Not
flight.
only that, all the passengers died, including the crew members. So who transmitted that information?
Right.
So
it was just striking panic and fear. Very useful point, gentlemen, you have made. Kieran, you have another story? Otherwise, I go to the editorial.
Go to editorial.
Okay, the editorial is coming from the Nigerian pilot, and it's at page 3. And it's on the Ethiopian airline tragedy. And of course, it says, painful exit of Adesami and Bashwa. There were 2 Nigerians, of course, who lost their lives in that tragedy on Sunday.
Well, it is a tribute to 2 Nigerians who not only are just African Nigerian distinguished Nigerians, but they're also African patriots. Professor Pius Adesami and Ambassador Abiodun Bashwa. The 2 were advocates and crusaders for good, just, equitable, and peaceful Nigeria. Sadly, the editorial is saying that they never lived to see it. In fact, the dean of the faculty of in the University of Carleton, Canada, where Adesina works, described him as a man who worked tirelessly to build the African Institute at the university. Ambassador Bashwa was also a former UN and African Union Deputy Joint Special Representative for Darfur and Sudan. They did well for Nigeria and represented Nigeria internationally. And we all mourned their passing away. We hope that they will have rest in peace, and our minds are with their families as they mourn their passing away.
All right, may their souls rest in peace. One story, of course, you recall there was rampant stories of persons stealing female underwear. Yes, there's a story there that's from the New Telegraph. A teenager has been jailed 6 years for stealing 3 female pants. This took place in Oshobo. He's been jailed without the option of fine. Of course, in addition to the pants, he also stole a phone. So all of that is going to spend the next 6 years behind bars.
Yes.
2 years for each pant.
Techniques of making money. Because, of course, he say Babalawo will turn the pant into money. I wonder what was going to the health of young Nigerians.
If that were efficacy, the Babalawos should be rich, because the Babalawo has wives and has daughters.
Absolutely. And if you are looking for used pants, you go to Bend Down Boutique and pick them up. Okay, Kirian, I think that's all we're going to have for our newspaper review this morning. By your table, we'd like to thank you. See you again tomorrow midweek. Okay, it's Good Morning Nigeria. We'll take a short break now. When we return, of course, we'll be getting into further discussions of a postmortem on Saturday's governorship and House of Assembly elections.
Can I see your particulars, sir?
Officer, my particulars no dey here.
in that case, you'll have to come with me to the police station.
Officer, which levels? Where I for find you something make you take arrange your weekend.
What? Offense number 1, driving without particulars. Offense number 2, trying to bribe an officer of the law.
I won't harass Nigerians or take bribe. Change begins with me.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Helen!
Hey, where's your mom?
Today is her toilet day.
What?
Helen!
Toilet day?
Tomorrow you're hosting a party and it's a matter of my reputation.
Even if you spend your entire day cleaning with all this, it still won't be party ready.
Impossible!
Challenge? New ticker Harpic 10X. Even if you use this solution 10 times, it won't give you the same cleaning like Harpic, because its new ticker formulation sticks to the bowl better, giving you a sparkling clean toilet.
Wow!
New Harpic 10X
gives me the freedom from toilet day.
A new edition of TV Guide is out with special focus on the role of the media in election coverage. Exclusive on the National Broadcasting Commission, its mandate as the sole regulator of Nigerian media. Dr. Toba Daba then and Ishak Modibo Kawu now. This edition also features the king of stand-up comedy in Nigeria, Ali Baba. NTA standards to be ready for election transmission after decades of abandonment. Find out from the DG transactional elections in our political space. An evil wind that blows no good. DG, National Orientation Agency Corporate. TV Guide, your indispensable companion, x-rays the impact of social media on electioneering process as electorates present their expectations from incoming government. Meet some TV professionals behind the screen and other inspiring stories in sports, entertainment, and lots more. Grab a copy at the vendor near you or NTA stations nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
Nigerian Television Authority. For more information and news updates, visit our website at www.nta.ng, or you can follow us on Twitter at NTA News Now, or you can like us on Facebook at NTA Network News. Stay connected on our YouTube channel at www.youtube.com/NTA News Online. Watch our live stream at www.nta.ng/live. NTA, you can't beat the rich.
All right, you're welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. As we said, of course, we are playing back the tapes, if you like, mentally, of what happened on Saturday, and of course, is still happening in the course of the elections, the coalition announcement of results, plus declaration of winners. We have guests with us in the studios here in Abuja, as well as, of course, some of our correspondents who we'll be linking up with in the course of this conversation. First, let's welcome Yusuf Shamsuddin. He is a Senior Program Officer at the Center for Democracy and Development. Yusuf, pleasure to have you on Good Morning Nigeria.
It's a pleasure.
Okay. Also here with us, a regular face on Good Morning Nigeria. We haven't seen him for a while now. Dr. Abubakar Kare. He's at the Department of Sociology at the University of Abuja. Dr. Kare, pleasure to have you on the program.
Thank you.
Okay.
And also with us in Abuja studio here is Abbas Idris. Abbas Idris is a domestic observer, and of course he observed the governorship and state houses of assembly elections in Kaduna State. You're welcome to the program.
Good morning, Nigeria.
And also joining us from our Lagos studio is, well, from our Ibadan studio first, we have Femi Johnson, who is a correspondent in Ibadan. He's going to give us an idea of what transpired in Oyo State, because, of course, you need to recall that Femi gave us an implicit analysis of your politics last week, few days before the election, and he's going to tell us more today. Femi, good morning and welcome.
It's a pleasure being with Nigerians once again to reveal further what happened in Oyo State last Saturday.
All right, Femi, let's start with you straight away. Femi, let's start with you straight away. Tell us what happened in Oyo. And I recall that you were not immediately forthcoming, but you did say that Oyo voters knew the candidate they were going to vote for, and you won't be surprised if that played out. Did that actually play out? Plus, what else was of interest?
Well, let me first of all say that it actually played out. It's just that in Oyo State, like I told you last week, they were prepared. They knew what they wanted, and they went for what they wanted. They've experienced so many things. They've had so many things that they have talked about. And as such, when you look at the results that came out, you will see that it was a parallel result. In fact, what even shocked many, that has never happened in the history of Oyo State, is that, for instance, in Ibadan, the total number of people who are now going to the House of Assembly are from only one party. That is one. Two, we are now having 26 members from his party in Oyo State. Let me be blunt. PDP is having 26 members, APC is having 5, and ADP is having 1. It has never happened before. What usually happened in Oyo State before is that you will see them splitting it, and you will see parties, at least about 3 or 4, having representatives in the State House of Assembly. And at the end of the day, if there is going to be maybe they want to impeach, it's usually tied before they can impeach somebody in Oyo State. But with what they have now, that is to show you that they prepared themselves, they wanted to do it. And let me go categorically into history. In 2011, in this election that we're talking about, particularly in Oyo State, we had a margin of 33,000. And that is between the winner and the first runners-up. In 2015, we had a margin of 72,000 in the election for Oyo State. But in 2019, we are having a margin of 157,639. PDP had 515,000 and I think 621, while APC was having 357,000 and I think 982. When you look at the margin, 157,000 was the gap between the first and the second. It clearly shows that the people of Oyo State felt it is time for them to have another change. It is time for them to change from one party to another party. Let them have a feel of that party. And apparently, maybe some of the things that the candidate of PDP talked about are what they are looking forward to. For instance, education. He was particular about the fact that when he's given the mandate, he's going to let the people of Oyo State actually have free education. And I think you know the history of Oyo State. And you know, being a pace setter, they love education. So maybe that actually have an influence. What also have an influence in the choice of the PDP is actually what they have experienced in terms of their salaries, in terms of their pensions, and in terms of a particular institution that is in Ogbomoso, and that is Lautech. They've experienced so many things about that institution, and they felt that there is the need for that institution to be brought back to life. And maybe some other few things that they also feel should be done include agriculture, and as well as what is the relationship between the governor and the governed. They felt they wanted more closeness, and those are some of the things that I feel actually happened and made that result to tilt in the way of PDP. And like I said last week, it is not that the governor too was not loved, it's just that they wanted a change, and they made up their mind that no matter what, this change must come. And that is why the change did not only come in the governorship seat, it also came in the House of Assembly seat.
All right, Femi, thank you very much indeed. Still reminiscing your analysis prior to the election. Now, would you say that all the elements of the information you gave us, played out in this election, considering also the fact, that violence, we recorded violence in certain pockets of violence in some parts of your state, which, of course, one of which culminated in the killing of a serving member of a House of Representatives, Temitope Olatoye. Now, we have been receiving conflicting versions of the incident that led to his death. What do you know, or what are you hearing about what actually happened that led to his death?
Even though, I was not there when he was killed, but let me say that from what we gathered, and equally too from what the Commissioner of Police of your state talked about and the feelers we had, Temitope Olatoye Sugar is a well-loved person in Oyo State. They did not only love him, they have this feeling that he is one of the best philanthropists that they have. Go to Temitope Olatoye Sugar anytime, you will get anything. I would even say that it was even in NTA about, I think, some few weeks to the election. That was just 2 weeks. And he promised that he was going to do something substantial for NTA. There is a particular hall in NTA premises that he said he was going to make sure he complete. And that is Temitope Olatoye Sugar for you. It's just that, in an election, antecedents matter. Temitope Olatoye cannot say he is also free in some instances because he had done certain things before which people did not like. But that is not to say that that was what actually led to his killing. But let me say categorically that what actually happened was Temitope Olatoye had actually voted. And after voting, I guess he was still going back maybe to some places where they do not want him to be. Where they do not want him to be in the sense that he will be having an influence in some of these places, and they do not want it to happen. And that is why I will not call them thugs, I will not call them miscreants, but I will say some unknown gunmen actually came out for him. It was a deliberate killing. And that's the most unfortunate thing about the death of Olatoye Sugar, because he was shot in the eyes. And by the time he got to UCH, his body was taken there. I think that was around 5. Doctors actually tried. He was taken to intensive care unit. He was equally being operated, but it was too late. It's just unfortunate that it happened. But that is exactly the scenario. And even the State Commissioner of Police has given us assurance that whoever is involved in the killing of Olatoye Sugar or whatever happened, they will make sure that they unravel every mystery surrounding the death of Olatoye Temitope. And that is what the people of Oyo State wanted. They want the police to unravel the mystery. They want to know the killers because they are not happy with the development. They are not happy with what has happened, and they are equally not happy with the fact that this is a man who actually is a member of the Federal House of Representatives. You will equally recall that he actually wanted to be a governor, but after all the issues that happened as regards whether you'll be a governor or not, he stepped down, moved to ADP, and now said he was going for the Senate. He lost out in the course of the Senate. He contested for that election, but we all know what has happened. Of course, he lost, and at the end of the day, apparently, he made up his mind that whatever it is, he is going to support PDP. He supported PDP. That was very obvious in that election, and that was one of the reasons, apparently, why maybe they went out for him. But let's leave deep. Since investigation is going, I would rather say, let's allow the police to unravel the mystery surrounding his death. And for us in Oyo State, and for the people of Oyo State, they are still mourning the death of Temitope Olatoye Sugar. And what is even unfortunate about it is that the people of Oyo State are yet to also forget Taiwo Ogunjobi. I guess the burial arrangement is this week, and now they have lost another person whom they know they loved so much. It's just unfortunate, and that's exactly what happened.
All right. Femi Johnson, thank you very much. You talked about 2 deaths there. Taiwo Ogunjobi, of course, was a footballer and a soccer administrator. On the other hand, Honorable Sugar was a politician who unfortunately got into the line of fire in Saturday's elections. Femi Johnson, would like to thank you for the perspectives and insights that you brought into the elections in Oyo State, and I'm sure that this will give more information to analysts as to how the politics of Oyo State should be viewed. Correspondent and, of course, an assistant director, Femi Johnson, thank you very much for being with us on Good Morning Nigeria today. Okay, so let's return to our guests here in the Abuja studios. First, Yusuf Shamsuddin, who is of the Center for Democracy and Development. Your organization sent out a number of observers for Saturday's elections. What were the highlights of your reports?
The major highlight of the reports, it's the fact that we observed a change in terms of improvement in the area of logistics from the INEC. There are also challenges that characterize the elections. And one of those is the thing that is the issue of intimidation on the part of the security agencies as well as political talks. Intimidating voters, observers, as well as journalists on the day of election, which I think it defeats the whole essence of having another high, looking critically about the process, how transparent the process is, and how the process is conducted to achieve the standard that we would expect election to be. We recorded good number of intimidations, and one of those is the abduction of some of our observers in the field on the day of elections. In Plateau, we got one of our observers who actually reported incidents of underage voting. In Plateau State, the observer was abducted and later released. And even in Akwa Ibom, one of our observers was abducted and was seriously harassed by political talks. They seized the observer's phones, deleted all the information on the phones, and later smashed the phone, and coerced the observer to pay them certain amount of money. So the observer was forced to pay a ransom before they could allow the observers to leave the polling unit. So all these boils down to the way and manner politicians actually see elections. Like I was discussing with some of my colleagues in the office a few days ago, I said, we are back to 2003, 2007, that we were still yearning to, experience an improvement in our electoral process. And it's quite unfortunate that despite a whole lot of resources, a whole lot of technical support that has been rendered into experiencing what we had in 2015, it's quite unfortunate that we have to go back to the years of 2003 and 2007 that, the crises, a lot of crises characterize the electoral process. And one of the other things aside the harassment and intimidation is a shift, like majorly we experienced that during presidential election and National Assembly elections. In terms of a shift in the strategy of political talks, not focusing squarely on the polling units in getting their work done, but also going straight to collation centers in disrupting the entire process. And I think the major sponsors of that would actually be people who have perceived that word or local government not to be their stronghold. And we've seen the outcome. We've seen a lot of results being cancelled by INEC. And I think this is a deliberate attempt on the part of politicians supporting, the activities of political talks, which I think we need to start our conversation not to dwell more in terms of what are the major consequences, yeah, a lot of people died, and we need to mourn them. Not only politicians who died, but even an ordinary citizen who died during the presidential election as well as this last election. We need to mourn them. It's actually a national tragedy which we need to take cognizance of, but we also need to extend our conversation to the level of accountability. We need to hold some people accountable for the death of a lot of Nigerians. And I think I would plead with the police to take that serious, because we need some people to be jailed. We need some people to be held accountable, because it's not just holding them accountable, but also to serve as deterrents for other people who would want to engage in such heinous act on the day of elections. And I think it's really a shame. It's a national shame, and we need to treat it as such.
Yeah, you know, he said that we went back to 203. But I will let us say that we went back to Second Republic, you know, because ballot snatching was the main issue as at that time, and it returned tenfold, if you like. And this issue of attacking collation centers is also new. Thank you. Let's go over to Abbas Idris. Abbas Idris is a domestic observer, and you operated in Kaduna State. Yes, and it's not one of the states actually where we recorded the pockets of violence. So, what was your experience in Kaduna during the election?
Well, thank you very much. The election in Kaduna, well, with some few pockets of violence and intimidations, but I think it was generally peaceful. It was expected that the violence and intimidation would be higher, much higher than what was expected. But fortunately, it was really relatively peaceful. The turnout initially was trying to be very low, but at a later time, there was mass turnout of voters, and INEC has promptly reported to the polling units as at when due, and all the materials were there, and we didn't have any problem with the card readers as well. So people voted peacefully, and you can see from the result of the election.
All right, Abbas, thanks. Dr. Abubakar Kari, let's have your initial salvo on the conduct and outcome of Saturday's elections.
Well, let me say I actively participated in the process. Shamsuddin and Co. engaged us as analysts. They deployed observers, over 3,000 of them, and we received reports from them and analyzed. Our conclusion at the end of the day was that the election produced a mixed result. In certain aspects, it went very well. Some novel things happened which were unprecedented. In other respects, there were occurrences of unwholesome activities and incidents which somehow tainted the election. On the positive aspect, we observed that there was an improvement in the process of deployment, particularly deployment of voting materials to voting centers, over and above what was obtained during the presidential election. In most parts of the country, the electoral officers and materials arrived between 7:30 and 8 p.m. However, in certain places across the country, the card reader malfunctioned, even though in most places, INEC actually promptly acted and addressed the problem. And then there were pockets of violence, so much so that we recorded at least 30,000 deaths across the country. However, it is...
Say that again, please.
30,000 deaths across the country.
30,000 persons died.
30 persons there, sorry.
Right, yes.
Not 30,000. 30 persons died across the country. But it is interesting that in most parts of the north, apart from Benue State, there were no deaths. And the nature of violence in most part of the north actually had to do with banditry and kidnapping in Katsina State, which we were not sure whether they are related to the election or they are related to activities of kidnappers. Most of the violence actually took place in states such as Rivers, Bayelsa, Oyo, Imo. And then there were acts of arson, particularly in Ebonyi and Benue states. And then the controversial deployment of the military in states of the Southeast and the South-South, which has generated a lot of reactions. And then in terms of outcome, there were a number of interesting things. We are all aware that elections were inconclusive in 6 states. And in terms of turnout, whereas in many parts of the country there was relatively low voter turnout, but in states such as Kano, Kaduna, Borno, Yobe, actually there was higher voter turnout than the presidential election. In many of the states, particularly in the north, the election was highly competitive. The margin of victory was quite smaller. And then there were novel outcomes, for instance, in Bauchi, where different parties were elected for different positions. As a matter, if I would give the example of Bauchi local government, they elected the APC for the presidency, the PRP for the Senate. The PDP for the APC for the Senate, PRP for House of Representatives, and NNPP for the State House of Assembly, and then the PDP for governor. And in many parts of the north, actually, that was what happened. The pattern of voting dramatically changed. The voters didn't actually vote for the parties that they voted during the presidential and National Assembly elections. So there are a number of takeaways, positive and negatives, that were recorded during the election. And our final conclusion at the CGT Analysis Center was that the election should have been better organized, particularly in terms of logistics, in terms of training of electoral officers, and in terms of security.
All right, thank you indeed, Kingsley. One interesting thing, that is very significant in what he said, is that more violence, if you like, was recorded in the south more than what obtained in the north. And of course, the voting pattern, which dramatically changed from voting for parties to voting for individuals. So I think that's a sense of political maturity on the part of electorate in the northern part of the country.
Yeah,
Thank you.
But those are issues we will return to subsequently in the course of this conversation.
Exactly.
Yes, Kirian, yes.
Now, it is time for us to go to Port Harcourt, where we have our correspondent, Onenge Fineface. Onenge Fineface, good morning and welcome. Well, Onenge, I'm not sure that your audio is coming through, but let's do it again. Good morning and welcome. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, I can hear you, Kirian. Thank you. It's a pleasure.
All right. Undoubtedly, Rivers State has proved to be one of the major flashpoints in this election. And some of us here in Abuja wondered how our colleagues like you in Port Harcourt managed to do your work on that day. Please bring us up to speed with what happened on Saturday in Rivers State.
Well, Kirian, Saturday was better compared to what happened in the first round of elections, where violence disrupted the processes of the voting especially. This time around, people had the opportunity to go out. In fact, and where I covered the elections, the monarch there called all parties to a meeting where they were made to sign a peace pact, agreeing not to disrupt the process. The same happened in Abonima, where there were shootings that resulted in some deaths in the first round of elections. As the National Assembly elections were postponed there. This time, both the national and then the current one were conducted there, and the conduct was peaceful. However, after the period of voting, when the collation started, reports of ballot snatching, reports of irregularities started coming in. Persons that are alleged to be military personnel, although there are claims that they are thugs dressed in military camouflage. We are seeing cutting away materials in some wards, and even that affected the collation centers. There are reports of disruptions in some collation centers too, like Okrika and Ogubolo, especially where we saw women going to confront the persons that made attempts to carry ballot to disrupt the collation process. In fact, to hijack materials from that local government area. Going back to Bonny, people came out, they voted. In fact, this time around, there were no disruptions whatsoever. I monitored the elections down to the point where results were announced, and the candidate of the PDP declared winner for the State Assembly election. Of course, back to Port Harcourt here, the collation started even at the state level on Sunday. There were serious disruptions. In fact, there was a contest for superiority and control between the police and the army at the INEC office. Journalists were made to leave the building for security reasons. People were denied access to that place. In fact, it was at that point that the collation was suspended in Rivers State. What we find is a blame game now. The PDP is alleging that the APC and AAC had the support and backing of the military to disrupt the process by going to hijack materials in collation centers. Meanwhile, other parties like the APDA, AAC, and APC, on the other hand, are saying that the PDP armed thugs with a military camouflage to disrupt the elections just to paint the military in a bad light. And so that blame game is on. There was also a protest, two protests in fact. Some persons out to say they are sure that they are the winners of the elections, and so they want INEC to declare the results, declare them as winners. You know, both protesters had the same claims. Everybody's laying claims. The candidate of the AAC also had a news briefing where he says that he was having clear lead in 11 local government areas, and so declared winner of the elections. And the same goes for that of the SDP, Precious Elekima, who also claimed that because of the irregularities and looking at the fact that he had some kind of votes, about over 900,000 votes, that he should also be declared winner. And so all the parties are saying they are the rightful winners, and so INEC should go on to declare the results. Meanwhile, while asking INEC to declare results, I'm also saying that results in some local government areas should not be accepted. We've heard of electoral officers who have come out to say, look, I was forced to declare the results I announced, and so INEC should discountenance those announcements. So it just continues. I wonder why we have to experience this in Rivers State. Whenever there's elections, Rivers State will have a rerun, will have a rescheduled elections, will have a repeated elections. It just goes on and on. Right now, we expect that in the next couple of hours, INEC will from the committee, the panel set up as to the fate of the elections for the electorate in Rivers State.
Onangie, stay with you. Let's get it clear. You are saying that perhaps for the most part, accreditation and voting apparently went on smoothly. The problem arose at the point of collation. And if so, where were the trouble spots? Was it collation at ward level, collation at local government level, or collation at the state level?
Well, in some local government areas, the problem started at the collation from the ward level, like in places like Okrika, where people were complaining that materials were hijacked. In Akukutoru also, there are complaints that, in fact, from the polling units, people were coming to away the materials so as to doctor the outcomes of the collation. But the worst of all was that of the governorship election at the state INEC office. Of course, no collation had even started. People were expecting the local government officers to come into the state where as expected. Of course, journalists had gathered waiting for that process to commence when all the confusion started setting in. So the problem this time was collation at different points, some from the polling unit, some at the ward level, and some at the state level. Now, meanwhile, in some areas, succeeded for that of the state assemblies because some candidates had already been declared for the state assemblies. The PDP had most of those candidates, if not all, that has been announced. Of course, there are claims that APC had some too, AAC rather had some too, but we are yet to get the confirmation for all of that when this INEC had said for those that were clearly declared, they will stand, but what happens to those that have not been declared, we are yet to find out from INEC. But as it stands now, Rivers people are waiting for INEC to come up with a final decision as to whether they are going to uphold what has been done so far to go through the process. Now, there are concerns from our interaction with the people. They don't want to go back to the polls. Looking at the irregularities, the fright, the tension, they don't want to go back to the polls. So that's why different groups are protesting that INEC should go on to declare results based on what. Looking at the fact that there is tension now, if people are made to go back to the polls, there is no saying what could happen. And a lot of people are saying they don't want to go back to the polls. Look at the expenses. Like Bonny, for instance, to go to Bonny from Port Harcourt, you spend about 7,000 going and coming. And people have gone for 3 times. They are not willing to go back for the of time. The same applies to other communities like Kola and the riverine areas in Akukutoru, Asaritoru, Degema, Andoni, Opobo, and Koro. These are communities where you have to spend a lot to get your polling units. And so a lot of people are saying they don't want to repeat the process again. That's why the call for INEC is very intense.
All right, Anongie, I'm sure you must have seen some of the visuals that went viral from Saturday up until yesterday. Some of those visuals were either still pictures or videos alleging the disruption of the collation process. And the faces, of course, were quite visible. And if, therefore, there were rogue elements in the uniforms of the police or the military, were there reports also of those rogue elements, those thugs, who were arrested, while they were posing as bona fide military or police officers?
At the moment, we've not had any report. The last information from the military, that was a statement issued by the acting director, Army Public Relations, Colonel Sagir Musa, disclaiming those persons that the military was not involved. Direct reaction to the UK Observer's report. But no arrest has been made, and so that also heightens the wonder that people were involved in this kind of activities, and the military is saying they are not part of them. So how come nobody has been arrested? We've not had any reports of arrest. Maybe there would have been arrests, but they've not been made public, perhaps preliminary investigations. We hope that in the next maybe couple of hours or a few days we'll get information. Similar scenario played out in the last elections where the military handed over some persons to the police after the elections. That might also, don't know for now if they've actually arrested. They are yet to say anything, and that also questions the claim that the persons involved were not military personnel. But then, of course, videos and pictures viral on the social media about the disruption of the process by armed persons. Like I said, parties like that of the SDP, the APDA, the AAC, who are claiming that these are armed thugs. But then the question is, if you have armed thugs rampaging on election day, how come from the morning to night or throughout the period of their brigadage, nobody has arrested or apprehended any of them up till now? And if they have, they will be able to come up with that in the course of time.
All right, Nigeria Fine Face, we believe that it's important to track that aspect, you know, to know whether arrests were made, because recall, Kingsley, that in the first election, that's the Presidential and National Assembly election, there were pictures shown by the military themselves, you know, people that were, you know, caught, with election materials and all of that. So, Fine Face, thank you very much indeed for your analysis. Well, if need be, perhaps in the coming days, we may return to Port Harcourt for further analysis. And, you know, we have an avalanche of problems in Rivers State, you know, and it's becoming so detrimental to the normal peace that should exist in that state just because of elections. That's right. And by the way, the major party in that state did not have a governorship election, a governorship candidate in the election. So what would have been the major stake that has led to the kind of stories we're hearing from there? A lot of curiosities. Well, all right. Meanwhile, we are back to Abuja here, and first we would like to ask Yusuf Samshuddin, the Director of Center for Democracy and Development, to tell us how he feels about the entire scenario, not just Rivers State, but what played out in all parts of the country with respect to violence, respect to impersonation, and what have you. Where is this taking us to?
Yeah, first and foremost, I'm not Director of CDD. I'm the Senior Program Officer. Well, like I said earlier, if we just take a look at most states that the elections were conducted, we look at the southwest region. We recorded pockets of violence in Ogun State prior to the elections, even starting from January this year with the attack within the inter-party crisis within the PDP. Even we received reports of stockpiling of arms and ammunition ahead of the election for use by political talks. And if we look at the south, that is the region, geopolitical zone where we got a whole lot of reports from Akwa Ibom. We got a report from Delta, we got a report from River State, and we go to the southeast, we got a report in terms of intimidation and harassment from Imo, and few other states there, and down to the North Central. I totally agree with Dr. Mao. Most of the intimidation, harassment that we received, was received from the southern region, it's incomparable to that incidents that happened in the North Central. So, but generally, if you look at that, we've come to a time that politicians are rethinking their strategy. And if we look generally that in 2003, 2007, there wasn't anything like introduction of electronic gadgets to promote transparency and accountability in the electoral process. Smart card reader came into being, and since that, we've seen a whole lot of reduction in the incident of ballot snatching, ballot stuffing, as we used to record in 2003, 2007 elections. And since that, which most politicians who are so overambitious to win elections, that has tamed their excessiveness in ensuring that they win election at all costs. But these politicians still know this zero-sum game ideology. They want to win the election at all costs, and so they have to rethink their strategy. And part of rethinking their strategy is for them to look beyond what they can do at the polling unit, because during the presidential election, we received the reports from River State, a situation whereby ad hoc staff were accosted on the way to polling units, and they were beaten up, and both sensitive and non-sensitive materials were taken away from them. And I guess that would be for the purpose of ballot snatching. And now that in the lead up to the governorship election, INEC declared that for those, for polling units of a ward, that there are evidence that there are issues with regards to manual accreditation, hijack of ballot box and ballot papers, and so on and so forth. INEC will record 0 for them. It won't be cancellation, but rather record 0 vote for them. And what they had to do is for them to start attacking collation centers to see how they can influence, disrupt the process, and that is, we can see that playing out in most of the state. At the moment, there is inconclusive election declared in 6 states, which is quite something that we wouldn't have thought about. These inconclusive elections, mainly because there's a good number of election votes that were cancelled in some locations, which came as a result of disruption of the process.
All right. Yusuf Shamsuddin, thank you very much. We are going over to Lagos, as Kirian earlier indicated, to introduce our next guest. That's Dr. Abiola Akinode Afolabi, who is the chairperson of the Transition Monitoring Group. Dr. Akinode Afolabi, pleasure to have you again on Good Morning Nigeria. Of course, this is a post-mortem of the conduct and outcome of last weekend's governorship and state House of Assembly elections. I know that you have your own perspective on what went on, but one key issue that it's come up is the assault on collation centers. Why is it that collation centers appear so vulnerable? And does the assault or attack on a collation center necessarily obliterate all results from primary and secondary sources?
It's unfortunate that we found ourselves in this situation, as a country. It looks like this year's election brought out more new dimension of violence, to the electoral process. If you look at and I also think that if you look at the off-seasons elections, one of the good thing that the innovation that came out from there was the fact that there was electronic transmission, so which gives that opportunity for less focus on places like collation centers and all of that, and also help in terms of addressing issues of possible leakages. And you can see that from what we saw in the last election, there were a lot of allegations of some form of leakages, as the results were passing through polling units to ward level, to local government, to different, levels of collation center. And the other issue is also that in elections that we have so much security intervention, you would expect that if the security is going to be relevant at all, they should be relevant in places where to help in terms of securing votes in places like collation center and all of that. And what that has done to the electoral process, or to this last election, is to actually make the so-called security intervention very unnecessary, because that's not even helped in terms of securing, the votes in any way. We have had situations whereby people have been challenged all through the processes. There have been intimidations of voter. There have been harassment from voting to counting, to collation center. Still yet, we said we have a lot of security protection. So there is something really wrong about this whole thing. And I think that some things came into play, and which we need to look at appropriately. The overkill security intervention in this election, the power of incumbency was actually very, very strong, and the impunity that also goes with. People think they can do anything and they can go scot-free, and the fact that we don't also hold people accountable. And I think it's important for us to see what we need to do, going ahead from this election. There's a need for total audit from level to level, from stages to stages of this election. I think some of the things that we saw around the states in Nigeria in this last election, actually, it's really an embarrassment that in 2019 we are still where we are still here, and we have not been able to move. And that's why, to some of us, there are issues of credibility of elections. So how do you want to say that the election is credible if we have all this gamut of complaints all across the country, from Katsina to Ogun to Lagos, to Nasarawa to Plateau? There were a whole lot of issues dealing with violence, dealing with security. It's really a total embarrassment.
Still with you, you have actually enumerated some of the difficulties encountered during these elections. But I want to ask you a question as someone who's been, monitoring elections, or rather observing elections. And I'm also sure that you've had experience observing election outside Nigeria. Now, let me ask you this. Now, what will be your advice with respect to remedial mechanisms that could be profiled to see how some of these, incessant abnormalities during elections can be addressed? Are you going to be suggesting some form of technological intervention to see how we can, avoid attacks on collation centers and, of course, impersonation of military or police personnel and all of that in our elections?
First thing is that, and that's why I emphasize more on accountability. The first thing is that people can't do this whole thing and they go scot-free. For example, military, what we call militarization is becoming a balance in Nigeria now. There are already judgments of the Supreme Court which does not allow military interference in the electoral process. It's never done. We don't want to make our democracy vulnerable in a manner that the military will think if we can do this in an election, then we can as well come back, and rule the country. So we must be careful in terms of the extent to which the military should intervene in the election. In most of the elections that I have observed outside this country, I didn't see like what we saw in Rivers. I didn't see having armored tanks. For what reason? Was there a demonstration? Was there a protest? Why should we have such, interference in the electoral process? So it's not, it's really didn't really go well for the democratic space, presently. And beyond that, just people talk about the need for digital election in such a manner that people can vote even from their homes. I think we are getting there. If you look at the number of people, if we look at data and all of that, we have quite a number of Nigerians that can use, that are on the social media, meaning that people are quite, advanced in terms of technology. So we should be looking at that, moving forward to 2023. While I am also aware that we have a lot of high number of illiterates, so meaning that there will still be people who would need to use, the manual space, come to the voting. We still see that not only in Nigeria, we see it even in the US. There are people who have the options of using the electronic platform, the digital platform, and people can also use the manual. But it will reduce the number of people, that will come to queue, and that will discourage, people who want to go and hijack ballot boxes, snatch ballot boxes, or foment trouble. So we need to be looking at, how to address this. We can't continue in this way. 2023 or off-season elections that will come forward must demonstrate that, the election can be handled in a different way, so that people can also have confidence in the system. One of the things that what we are saying now, what this is doing to us is also to lose the respect and confidence for the electoral umpire. And when we get to that level, then it becomes much more difficult.
Dr. Afolabi, earlier you talked about the fact that in one of the off-cycle elections that we had, probably Ekiti or Osun, results were electronically transmitted. And if that's what you said, did that invalidate the results? And if not, why did there appear to be such doctrinaire resistance to similar application for the elections that we have just had? Which
was why we were conversing for the electoral bill that was the electoral law that was amended, because that was one of the things that would have come in that law. At least that was one of the major amendments that was being made. In those other elections, it was easier to quickly know, by transmitting it to the central, it makes it easier for people to, for the election to be collated easier, so that we don't have to depend on moving from one place to another. From the word, you need to hear the experiences of those who are professors who actually went for collations. How some of them had to, they were held on stage, and some of them had to jump the fence and all of that. We can avoid that. And also the other thing that also is also coming out is it seems that there's a need for us to begin to look at generally how to find a way of decentralizing the processes so that we don't have to go through all 1, 2, 3, 4 stages, to be able to come to the state collation center. So I think that one of the benefits of electronic transmission would have been to help in terms of avoiding some form of leakages, that we kept seeing in the electoral process. And that's why what happened during the off-cycle elections were quite innovative, and it helped in terms of reducing the kind of tension that you would see in the election. This time around, we have seen new dimensions. Beyond people burning ballot papers, you now see people waiting for people to hijack, to hold them hostage. It's really out of place. And the question is, so what is the position of the security? So if they are not complicit as they are saying, how come they were not able to secure those places in such a manner that people cannot enter to hold collation officers to ransom? It's really, it's a new dimension, and it's a dimension that is a source of concern that we need to address.
All right, Dr. Abiola Akeode Afolabi, Chairperson, Transition Monitoring Group. Well, we thank you for your submissions this morning on this conversation. Thank you indeed. And we are still on Good Morning Nigeria, and it's about time for us to link up our correspondent at the Sokoto Network Center, Abdurrahman Usman Jibrila. It's good to see you this morning. And how is the seat of the Caliphate?
Good morning, Kirian. Sokoto is relatively peaceful, and elections of the gubernatorial election has been declared inconclusive, and the Independent National Electoral Commission in Sokoto is getting set for the rerun election that led to the governorship election to be inconclusive. And there was a keen contest between the political parties. 51 governorship candidates contested, but the two major political parties, the APC and the PDP, really tried, and because even the turnout of voters, when compared to the presidential and national assembly election, the turnout of voters is higher than the last 2 weeks election. And in the last 2 weeks election, the total voters that turned out to vote for the president and national assembly members, all in all in Sokoto, is almost 850,000 voters. But even though the election is inconclusive for the governorship election, more than 950 voters turned out so far to vote for the governorship election. And presently, 136 polling units across 22 out of the 23 local government areas of Sokoto State going to, the rural election is going to take place in these polling units. And the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, says it will soon communicate on the rescheduled rerun to when it will hold. And the two major political contenders, the PDP candidate scored 489,558 votes, and the APC scored 486,145 votes. And
all right, Abdulrahman, thank you very much. We're getting pressed for time. Now, it's the governorship election that has been declared inconclusive, as you indicated. What about the state houses of assembly? How many seats were up for grabs, and how many of those seats have been declared? Spread.
Even last night, we were with the INEC officials. The INEC said it's still compiling the list of the state assembly elections, but so far we have 30 constituencies, and so far there is no any official result cumulatively bringing all the 30 constituencies. But our correspondents were able to get some announcements at the collation centers for the constituencies, and so far we've got the result of 13 out of the 30 constituencies officially. And but as time goes on, the INEC says later today they will call a press conference to announce how far so far. And we even asked them with regards to the cancellation of the results of some polling units, which may affect the state assembly elections too. But later in the day, the INEC will make its position known on the state assembly elections in Sokoto State.
All right, at this point, we'd like to thank Abdulrahman Usman Jibrila. Keep tracking INEC, and, well, of course, when INEC announces the results, we will get to know. Thank you indeed for your contribution on this edition of Good Morning Nigeria, all the way from Sokoto. Thank you. And now back to Abuja here. And briefly, too, Abbas Idris, we've listened to Dr. Adiola in Lagos and other panelists here in the studio. What is your take on what actually transpired, generally speaking, just briefly?
Thank you very much. I think my take there is with the challenges faced by the INEC and the electorates generally, we must give kudos to INEC for the changes that we witnessed rapidly. If you look at it from experience, I mean historical perspective, the elections in Nigeria were generally violent. And now we only have pockets of violence, and the violence have been keep changing from elections to election. And I think we have to also keep sitting and reviewing our own strategies, especially the security architecture. We need to also work seriously on that. We have prevented the security personnel from using arms at the police, at the polling stations, but yet we don't have strategy of checking the electorates coming to vote. Some of them come with sophisticated weapons, and that is why they have access to having attack for the election officials. So we need to review that and look at it critically. You see, there are a lot of changes. The pattern of voting is really going on, changing, and that is why we have to give credit to INEC, but we need to give much voter education as well, because the turnout of the presidential election, you look at it, is in some places is much, much higher than the local elections, and which are very close. They are the representatives of the people directly. But some people, when you interview them, they will tell you that I have voted for the president, I don't care about my House of Reps, I don't care about my, House of Assembly. And these are the direct representatives that you can go to and channel your own problem. So I think we need to give voter education, not voter information. We have to give voter education so that people will get to know who is really directly can affect them, as well as give them the much-needed dividend of democracy.
All right, Abbas Idris, thank you very much. Dr. Abubakar Kari, what accounts for the reported disproportionate election-related violence in the South as against the northern part of the country?
Yeah, I think there are several factors. And we have to look at the areas one by one. For instance, the most notorious region, if I have to use the word, is the South-South, particularly Rivers, Bayelsa, Akwa Ibom. I'll attribute all this into the nature of the political culture of that particular area, on the one hand, and then preponderance or proliferation of small arms around that region. By political culture, I mean the sum of the behavior, action, attitudes of members of the political class on the one hand and the electorate on the other. If you take River State, for instance, since the implosion within the PDP of 2014, the nature of politics there, the average attitude of political leaders in River State is to dominate my opponent, is to ensure that come rain, come shine, I vanquish my opponent using whatever means possible. And the means possible that they usually do is to recruit idle youth, give them arms. Many of these youth are within the creek areas, and they are well armed, and they are usually unleashed onto the society on election day. In fact, there was a time that we are discussing this thing. A professor called this an armed industry. It's some kind of industry where there are thousands of youths that are well armed, and they are servicing politicians in very unwholesome ways. So the average attitude there is to vanquish my opponent, and then there are arms around. In this part of the country, probably due to a different attitude towards election, people tend to look at individuals rather than parties. And then there is tendency also to listen to political leaders who have been calling for peace, for peaceful conduct, and so on and so forth. So probably that is why there appears to be more political violence in that part of the country than here.
All right, thank you very much. That's a very good analysis, and it bothers on proper understanding of what election is really all about. In the North, we experienced, by what happened, we experienced a maturity in understanding election. Gentlemen and lady in Lagos, it's said that we are going to conclude this conversation for today, and I'd like to appreciate all of you for sharing your time and your thoughts on this conversation. Yusuf Shamsuddin, Center for Democracy and Development, CDD. We appreciate your comments. Dr. Abubakar Kari, Head of Department of Sociology at the University of Abuja. It's been wonderful sharing your thoughts on this edition of the program. Thank you indeed. And Abbas Idris, it's been good talking to you this morning. Thank you indeed. And we're not forgetting Dr. Abiola Akiode Afolabi, the Chairperson, Transition Monitoring Group. Thank you for reaching us all the way from Lagos. It's been a pleasure talking to you this morning. All right, you're still watching Good Morning Nigeria. Let's take a short break now. But when we come back, we have the second segment of this program, which we dwell on entrepreneurship. Stay with us.
Nigerians. Suicide bombers are not spirits. They are not ghosts. They are human beings like you and me. They live amongst us. They are your neighbors. They are your friends today, but terrorists tomorrow. So you must know your neighbor now. Security begins with you and me. Know your neighbor. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me.
If you see something, say something. Nigeria unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
You are watching NTA, Nigerian Television Authority. For more information and news updates, visit our website at www.nta.ng, or you can follow us on Twitter at NTA News Now, or you can like us on Facebook at NTA Network News. Stay connected on our YouTube channel at www.youtube.com/NTA News Online. Watch our live stream at www.nta.ng/live. NTA, you can't beat the rich.
Nigerians. Suicide bombers are not spirits. They are not ghosts. They are human beings like you and me. They live amongst us. They are your neighbors. They are your friends today, but terrorists tomorrow. So you must know your neighbor now. Security begins with you and me. Know your neighbor. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me.
If you see something, say something. Nigeria, unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, welcome back, and good morning, Nigeria. Still live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Now, our second topic for conversation this morning is on the activities of the British Council and entrepreneurship in Nigeria. The British Council has been in Nigeria since 1943, and every year it reaches out to thousands of students, educators, policymakers, academics, and entrepreneurs in the country. In the studio to briefly share with us some of the activities of the Council, that's to say the British Council, as well as entrepreneurship in Nigeria, we'd like to welcome Dr. Philip John Hayab is a lecturer at the Kaduna State College of Education in Kaduna State. Dr. Hayab, pleasure to have you with us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you for welcoming me.
Also here with us in the studios is the Director of British Council, Ahmed Mohammed. Ahmed, pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right, Kieran?
All right, let's begin with Ahmed, who is a director of British Council. You are here to talk about the activities of the British Council. Well, from what Kingsley read out earlier on, British Council has been operating in Nigeria since 1943. That's a long time. And we want to find out from you what aspect of entrepreneurship that the British Council is concerned with.
Well, thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be here today with you this morning to talk about the work of the British Council. And as you rightly said, we've been in Nigeria since 1943. That's 75 years operating in Nigeria. And throughout that time, we've been involved in a lot of different ways to support not just the Nigerian entrepreneurship sector, but supporting the Nigerian society to develop in a way that enables it to reach the objectives and ambitions of its citizens. And I would like to talk a little bit about how our work supports the education sector, because I think that connects eventually to entrepreneurship. And our role is to see how we can support education in Nigeria to produce not just graduates, but citizens that are able to contribute effectively to the development of not just the economy in Nigeria, but the society in Nigeria. And we achieve that through a number of different ways, by investing in teacher training, for instance, by working in schools, by working with policy makers to look at some of the key things that they need to put in place to provide an enabling environment to support the education system in Nigeria. And as you create these graduates who are able to go into the workplace, of course, that supports entrepreneurship, that supports the growth of the economy in Nigeria. So our focus today is a little bit more about sort of how that education system, how that supports the Nigerian economy.
Dr. Yahab, of course, you are of the College of Education. What's been your experience with regard to the level of kind and level of support that the British Council offers in terms of teacher training?
The British Council has been working to support resources, reading resources, which is actually in short supply in our country. For instance, my first contact with the British Council was when I was a student and I was interested in going out to study. I went there, I got some perspectives. That time, the internet in Nigeria was not available. And then I was able to get books from the British Council that support the teaching and learning of English. And then there was radio programs which been sponsored by the British Council. One of it, I still remember, it was called the Learning Zone. And during the program was targeting low, that is maybe elementary learners of English. And this program would focus on maybe how to construct a good sentence, how to choose maybe the best, the correct prepositions, and whatnot. So by listening to this kind of radio program, which the British Council provides, and now they have resources online with the advent of the internet, one is able to build their capacity to communicate effectively in English. Now, the British Council's job is very important because if a teacher, which I am, is not able to communicate the ideas of a given lesson, then the learners will not be able to learn, and then there will be no effective learning, and then we will not be able to get expertise in the head, talk much more of creating ideas that will lead to entrepreneurship.
All right. Kiran, I was just wondering, the Shivney scholarship is, I don't know whether that's part under your jurisdiction, let me put it that way. I know that students who are seeking to write TOEFL come to whether IELTS is also involved, I'm not quite sure. Even though some persons would find, the TOEFL requirement something of a bit of an insult. But all of this part of the educational support programs that the British Council offers, and therefore, how does that link up with entrepreneurship?
Excellent. So I think, let me take the Achievement Scholarship first. The Achievement Scholarship is offered by the UK government across the world to support, the development of the various countries that the UK government partners with. And British Council has been involved in managing the Achievement Scholarship, but that is now being managed by a separate entity, which is the Association of Commonwealth Universities. We still provide some support to the network of alumni that has come out of the Achievement Scholarship in partnership with the British High Commission here in Abuja and in Lagos, for instance. But that's part of the aspect of our work in terms of supporting scholarships, and it's not just Achievement Scholarships. So you have the Commonwealth Scholarships and Fellowship Scheme, for instance. You have other scholarships schemes that are offered by different partners, and the emphasis is on how you get young Nigerians to have access to a global education system that prepares them once they come back to Nigeria to contribute more effectively. And of course, anywhere we go in Nigeria, as soon as you start talking to people, one of the first things that you will hear is, I was an Achievement Scholar, I was a Commonwealth Scholar, and that has had a transformative impact on my life. I was in Sokoto a few months ago speaking to the Vice Chancellor of the university, and one thing that, as soon as we started talking, he said to me, I went through the Commonwealth Scholarship, and that is responsible for where I am today. In terms of looking at sort of English language testing, TOEFL is one test. The British Council does manage and run a different test called IELTS, Test of English Language. And basically, that is about setting and assessing the proficiency in English for students that may be interested in going not just to the UK, but to Australia, to Canada, to other places for further education. And while there has been some controversy about this, I think the important thing is these tests and these standards for admission are set by the universities. So in Nigeria, for instance, the universities do set their own criteria for admission, and those criteria have to be followed by students that are going to those universities. And it's the same for universities in the UK and in Australia and the US. They set their admissions criteria, and we, as much as possible, want to enable Nigerian students to have access to those global sources of higher education.
Yeah, I'm still with you, Ahmed Mohammed. Your British Council's contribution to the development of education in Nigeria and other African countries cannot be overstated, and linking it to entrepreneurship is germane. But I want to ask you this, because many observers have noted that all the international agencies operating in Nigeria, such as British Council, which of course has been there for 75 years now, they wonder why technology is not part of what you bring to the table with respect to ensuring that Nigerians get a technological base to be able to function effectively in the world, especially now that ICT is ruling the world. So what aspect of technology are you bringing into bear on the program of the British Council?
I think there are a few key things there that we need to interrogate a little bit more. I think technology is a fantastic tool, but it is not a silver bullet. And I think this is something that has to be considered very, very critically. You have to use technology in a way that supports much broader objectives. So for instance, how do you use technology to support the education system? And that is something that we are very, very keen to explore in Nigeria. As part of our work in teacher training, for instance, we do quite a lot of work around digital literacy. And it's not just about access to the technology, but it's about how you use technology in the right way. So for instance, if we look at the elections that just happened, one of the key issues that came up is how social media has an impact on decisions people make and how media technologies have an impact on people. So making sure that people are able to filter the information they're seeing. So, in terms of the work that we do, we have a huge amount of resources that are available online. So resources that support English language teaching and learning, for instance, that support teacher development, that support anyone that's interested in learning English to go onto any of our websites or go through our podcasts or using one of our apps to learn English in sort of a more effective way. However, we have to be cognizant of the fact that if you don't use technology properly, you risk exacerbating digital exclusion. So, for instance, there are places in Nigeria where there isn't access to technology, where the cost of technology is prohibitive. So as part of a project that we're working on in partnership with Philip and his colleagues at the College of Education, with the National Commission for Nomadic Education, for instance, we're taking a look at those resources online and seeing how do we get resources that have been developed to support English language teachers into the hands of teachers that are working in some of the most low-resourced nomadic schools in Nigeria, for instance. And part of that might be using things like SD cards. So everyone has a phone. It might not necessarily have internet, but most people would have a phone that has an SD card or a memory card slot. So how do we take the content online and use it, put it on those SD cards, give it to those teachers, and they're able to partake in effective continuous professional development?
How? That's very briefly. Give us a sense rather of the nexus between what you're doing and entrepreneurship, because the sense people may have about entrepreneurship is ability to acquire the experience and insights into being self-employed, as it were, or becoming employers of their own. Yes.
Okay. So I think
if
you look at entrepreneurship, there are a couple of key things that are very important. One is the ability to be a problem solver. So this is the foundation of entrepreneurship, the ability to collaborate and communicate with others. And through a lot of our work, this is the heart of what we do. So for instance, in our teacher training programs, what we do is we work with teachers to pick up what are called core skills, these 21st century skills that young people need. So things like problem solving, critical thinking, communication and collaboration, digital literacy, and then get those teachers to work in their classrooms and help their students understand how they can use these skills once they leave school, but also once they go to university.
I'm not really cutting short, but what I can take away from your postulations is the fact that this is centered majorly on teaching English language, which is promoting the language of the British people. But it's good, really, because of what is our lingua franca. But, since Kingsley talked about linking it to entrepreneurship, that's why I brought in a technology in all of this. Because technology can give people direct employment. And are we getting technology orientation? Even among the students we're talking about, you're just teaching the students. What can technology do to get somebody employed or self-employed, as case maybe? What has been your experience?
Very, very briefly. So
in the 21st century, it's not possible it's going to be difficult for people to make progress without the knowledge of technology. So in the classrooms, we use technology like we have electronic teaching labs where we will teach, and then the resource that we need, we'll get it online, and the students are able to use. Like the SD cards, we play them in class, and then students are able to, that is the student teachers now, are able to make use of it. And once they go out there to become teachers, they are going to transfer this knowledge that they've acquired from the teacher schools. And
All right. Dr. Philip Hayab, lecturer at the Kaduna State College of Education. I would like to thank you for being on Good Morning Nigeria today. Director of British Council, Ahmed Mohammed, thank you for being with us on the program. And that, of course, does it for us today's edition of Good Morning Nigeria. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Until then, you'll have a lovely day ahead of you. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I am Kirian Umayo. Thank you for keeping us company. Please return again tomorrow for a fresh edition of Good Morning Nigeria. Have a great day.